Special Target 8 investigation tonight. Police say this man was a serial rapist in the making.
He attacked two East Grand Rapids High School girls at gunpoint, held them for 3 hours. He also targeted a Grand Rapids woman. Police got a hold of him outside of a children's dance studio. He had a gun.
Now, 26 years later, convicted rapist Kirk Douglas Anderson is a free man in the state's push to empty its prisons.
His release raises the question, is Michigan risking public safety to save money? Target 8's Ken Kolker investigates.
The 17-year-old East Grand Rapids High School girls used the payphone inside a drugstore in Gaslight Village. 8:30 at night, Valentine's Day, 1984.
They parked the car, I believe, right in that general vicinity. They got out, it went inside.
But when they got back in the car, they were not alone. The stranger in the back seat said he hadn't used his gun in a while, spun the .32 caliber chamber, nervously cracked his knuckles, even sang. For 3 hours, the girls did what they had to do to survive. 3 hours that have lasted a lifetime. Kirk Douglas Anderson, then 18, a year older than his victims, convicted of kidnapping, robbing, and sexually assaulting the girls, and for doing the same to a Grand Rapids woman just before that, sentenced in 1984 to 20 to 60 years.
This guy, you know, he committed these 2 rapes that night. He committed a rape the month before, and the day he was caught, there is no doubt in my mind he wasn't going to commit another rape that night.
26 years later, Anderson is living on Grand Rapids' southeast side, paroled in January, listed on the sex offender registry. He is 44, lived more than half his life locked up, tells Target 8 he has changed. His victims, unaware of his release until contacted by Target 8. They are now 43, too afraid to talk about it, wondering whether he has truly changed. And that sets up the conflict. It costs $32,000 a year to house a prisoner.
I'm afraid under a process in an attempt to empty our prisons, we are exposing the public to considerably greater danger. And that's what's happening. Paroles are up. The definitions of violent criminals seem to be changing.
A decade ago, a much stingier parole board approved less than half the parole requests. Now it says yes to nearly 2/3. That's already helped cut the prisoner count by 6,400 in 3 years, the second biggest drop in the country behind California. 2 parole board members, one from Ionia, the other from the Detroit area, approved Anderson's release last fall. That, according to documents obtained by Target 8, despite 63 prison misconduct reports, including fights and weapons, though most during his first few years in custody. His last serious prison offense, taping a razor blade under his TV tray in 2006. He walked out of prison January 5th, 2010, also to the surprise of the former East Grand Rapids police chief.
You didn't know about the release? First time I heard about it was when you called me. I thought he was going to be in for much longer. I was taken aback.
When we come back for the first time, a breakdown shows just how many violent criminals the state is releasing.
13,500 felons paroled last year from Michigan's prisons. It's the most ever, a single-year jump of 17%.
Nearly 1,000 of those parolees sent to Kent County, with big jumps also seen in Ottawa and Kalamazoo counties.
In this special report, Target 8 investigator Ken Kolker takes a closer look at those numbers and a crime that haunts victims 26 years later.
You're dealing with people who are not the most reliable people in the world. A lot of them are dangerous, and you're playing Russian roulette with them.
For the first time at Target 8's request, the state has released a snapshot of those paroled. Statewide, 7,600 of parolees released last year, more than half were violent, including 475 sent to Kent County alone.
There are people that think that prisons are filled with frauds and people that write bad checks. Now, prisons are filled with dangerous people.
136 convicted sex offenders paroled to Kent County last year. Among them, Kirk Douglas Anderson. After kidnapping the 2 girls at gunpoint from Gaslight Village in 1984, he forced them to drive to ATMs for money, then to a warehouse 3 miles away. He forced them to park here, near this loading dock of a factory on the southeast side of Grand Rapids, where he raped one of the girls in the back seat, then molested the other. He ran away, then returned seconds later to wipe away his fingerprints.
They never would have submitted if they didn't think they were going to die.
6 days later, police caught Anderson next door to the Gaslight Village drugstore, outside a dance studio with a loaded gun. Young girls inside.
He was standing looking in the window. This was Venetian blinds. Notice they don't have that anymore.
His victims and their parents wrote emotional letters to the judge, urging life in prison. The victims are still friends, one married with children, the other a successful businesswoman. Neither wanted to talk about the case, both unaware until Target 8 reached a relative that Anderson was free. State law requires the prison system to notify victims of changes in a prisoner's status, including parole, but that went into effect a year after Anderson's crimes. The family still could have signed up to get notices, but they did not know. Prison officials say it's unclear how many victims from older crimes are also in the dark.
I hope they have gotten through this. But like I said, there is a small part of them, I think, every day, that relives this.
Anderson spoke briefly off camera with Target 8. He lives with an aunt 4 blocks from the warehouse loading dock in Grand Rapids, where he assaulted his victims. He says he wants to meet the women, tell them it wasn't their fault.
I'm just going to tell you, he's a great guy.
Yeah?
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. So he's changed, obviously? I mean, he did some bad.
He was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Prison officials say they do more than ever to prepare felons for freedom. The state conducted a risk assessment to determine if Anderson poses a public risk, but it refused to release it to Target 8 under the Freedom of Information Act.
There are no guarantees, but we try to mitigate risk. We try to give offenders the tools to succeed.
Anderson is among thousands paroled through the state's reentry program, wears a tether and GPS tracking device, lives under many restrictions. Former State Senator William Van Regenmorter, author of the state's Crime Victims' Rights Act, fears the releases will come back to bite the state. What will the bite be? I mean, somebody getting killed or a family getting killed?
Yeah. A murder. Sure. Murder, rape.
It's Ken Kolker reporting. For another look at this story, head to our website.
There we invite you to share your thoughts and opinions. Just go to woodtv.com.